All right, well, we'll move on to the next guy that you have on your list here on the underrated side. And this one I can't wait to talk about because talk about a guy that has already been spoken about for a couple of months and the jury is still for sure out. The split on this guy is louder than any other player in this draft cycle. It's quarterback Will Levis out of Kentucky, all 6'3", 232 pounds of him. On the consensus draft board, he's quarterback 3, number 7 overall. He's been one of the 3 guys that has been talked about in that top of the draft quarterback prospect. It's been Stroud, it's been Young, and it's been Levis. And Levis has been the guy that has been the most consistently divisive of those 3. Part of that is because of the lack of production he had at Kentucky in his senior year. Part of that is, people looking at him and thinking he's nothing more than a guy that just has a lot of the both tangibles and intangibles that NFL scouts, GMs, and owners love to fall in love with when they're looking at guys from a traits perspective, which we've talked about quite a bit. The philosophy is a little bit different from the average fan looking at these guys versus front offices and scouts and GMs looking at these guys. He's got a lot of those traits on paper, but those ingredients aren't something we've seen him actually put together in a cohesive recipe all that much. You have him down as a little bit underrated. Maybe the hate's a little bit too strong. So talk me through your thoughts on Will Levis and why you have him a little bit higher on your board than most.
Well, so the first thing I'll say is I would argue that he has put together a complete season in 2021. So that's the first thing I would say. With Will Levis,
so not in recent memory.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched the film a few weeks ago, so it's recent for me.
Recent for you. Yeah. Recent in most fans' minds. Right.
So I don't think that I'm higher on Will Levis than the average NFL team, or even like the average draft analyst that watches film. Like
but everybody else.
I'm actually, lower than him on the, I have him ranked lower than the consensus, and he's my quarterback 4. But I think that he's being severely underrated by fans.
Right. The zeitgeist is very out on Will Levis. They've been that way for a while.
Yeah. And I see this, I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but like I see literally there has to be like a lab where they make these people that are just coming out with the exact same takes, because I had to stop using TikTok because every single TikTok I would see was the exact same take on Will Levis. And it's like, is the future.
Why am I not shocked that your TikTok is just TikTok draft analysts over?
Yeah.
That's not surprising.
Like people calling him the future Zach Wilson. They're nothing alike as prospects. There's a lot of people talking about like pro day throws that, hasn't happened yet, but pro day throws are not affecting any NFL team's opinion of a player. I see another argument I see is like, this is the exact same thing we had with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, where they were quarterback 1 and quarterback 2. And then late in the season, you get Zach Wilson rising up the draft boards and people overthink it. And like trying to compare it to Will Levis. Will Levis has been on NFL teams' radars since like before anyone heard of him. I mean, because he's got a rocket arm. He operated an NFL offense effectively. So yeah, I think there's a lot of. I really do think that like the Zach Wilson becoming a clear bust a few weeks before everybody started talking about Will Levis has really polluted the discourse on him. And it's like, some of the most extreme takes.
That's totally
it just
fair.
Seems like you haven't even watched them. And the last thing I'll say,
think too. I've seen a lot of pile on just because a handful of folks have really not. A handful of key folks I've seen be like, I just don't see it with Will Levis, which is fine. You can have that opinion. But it's been this like groupthink pile on of like, oh yeah, Will Levis is not it. There's also, frankly, there's been, I think, a race element to it, just because there's, long been the discussion around how NFL teams don't necessarily value black quarterbacks the same way that they do white guys. So a lot of people that I think are more shallow thinkers aren't interested in actually looking at the people or these players as prospects and evaluating them blindly, are looking at these two guys in Young and Stroud, who for a while have been the two guys that people have been looking forward to in this draft class at quarterback, and then this big stereotypical like Josh Allen build rocket arm white guy comes flying up the board, and then they see him not produce in his senior year or in his final year at Kentucky, and everybody's like, what is this nonsense? Which I get on a shallow level, but if you look into him as a player, that shouldn't matter.
Yeah, I think, I would agree. I think like the kind of historical like opinions that, or not opinions, but like the
implications,
way that black quarterbacks have been evaluated by the NFL. Definitely like the juxtaposition of that, I'm sure has some effect on the reaction. But the last thing I want to say with Will Levis is like, I don't think you can make a complete evaluation of him if you haven't watched the 2020 tape, because if you only watch 2021, I completely understand not seeing Will Levis as like a top half of the first round guy. I still think he's a first rounder regardless.
Do you mean the 21 versus the 22 tape, or do you mean the 2020 tape?
Or if I said I meant 2021, like not this past year.
Just making sure. 2021 is the tape you have to watch, not just 22, right?
Yeah, because I mean he was playing through an injury this past year. I don't think that he would. I don't think he would have, like, let's compare him to CJ Stroud. I don't think a single player on Kentucky's offense would have started for Ohio State. Just going down the lineup.
I think that's fair.
I don't think,
I
think you could say the same thing about Alabama also. And, just like to completely discount supporting cast and the difference in quality of offensive coordinator that he had from 21 to 22. I don't think you can discount that with a quarterback. With that being said, it's important. Like, I'm saying that I don't think you have to be that good of a quarterback prospect to be worth a top 10 pick. Honestly, I think the value that you get as a franchise of actually hitting on one of those guys is just astronomical. Like, if you hit on a Patrick Mahomes,
it's immeasurable.
You're set, right? Or Josh Allen, like any top 5 quarterback, any of those like set and forget quarterbacks where you're a guaranteed contender, like that is so worth it. And missing on a quarterback with a first round pick, like, spending the 7th pick on a quarterback and you play him for a year and a half and he ends up sucking, that doesn't set your franchise back in the way that people think it does. It's like you're going to get another first round pick the next year. So just, keep trying it. So I'm not like, oh, Will Levis is going to be a franchise quarterback. But I think if you're a quarterback needy team and, you're in that probably like 6 to 12, 6 to 15 range, I think he would definitely be worth it.
So to be clear, this is kind of a situational conversation. He's been talked about as a guy that might go in the top 5. I've got tickets on him to go number 1 overall, just because I know NFL teams sometimes fall in love with guys and make rash decisions. And it wouldn't shock me if somebody moved up there to get him. But would you consider taking? I know you said he's your quarterback 4. I'm assuming that's behind Richardson.
Yeah, and
okay, so you would.
The grade difference between Richardson and Levis is pretty small. Honestly, I don't think I see it moving off of Bryce Young being quarterback 1, although I do have concerns about his size. But really, like all 4 of these quarterbacks, I would put in the same tier. In terms of an average draft class, they're just like all the classic, 3rd or 4th overall pick type of guy. Like they're like the second, how in kind of a standard draft class, there's the quarterback 1 goes 1st overall, and then like the second quarterback goes with a 3rd or 4th pick. All 4 of these guys are in that second tier for me. So it's really like, honestly, I wouldn't really have a problem. It would depend from team to team, but I wouldn't have a problem with any of these 4 quarterbacks being the first quarterback selected.